This is called Recognizing Self. Who are you? And it's on page 36 of the Self-Led Project version 6.0. I'm going to read and probably make comments as I go through and read it to you. I just have found that if you have access to a video where I'm reading it and maybe discussing it a bit, you're far more likely to read the content and maybe get some value from it, which is, of course, what it's designed for, to support you in your self-led project experience. So, recognizing self. Who are you? Everyone is at their core a self containing many crucial leadership qualities such as perspective, confidence, compassion, and acceptance. Now, that's Dick Schwartz. He goes on to say, working with hundreds of clients for more than 2 decades, some of whom were severely abused and show severe symptoms, has convinced me that everyone has this healthy and healing self, even though many people initially have little access to it. When working with an individual, the goal of IFS is to differentiate this self from parts. I think that's really important. Richard Schwartz, Internal Family Systems creator, in his first edition of that book, Internal Family Systems, that's where I got this quote, saying that the goal of IFS is to differentiate this self from the parts. That's important, and we'll talk more in a moment about why that's important. To differentiate this self from the parts, thereby releasing its resources. When the individual is in the state of self, we can work together to help the parts out of their extreme roles. Resources, key word there. A lot of times when we're talking about self, we can refer to the qualities of self, of the 8 C's, the 9, 10 C's. It depends on where you're finding those C's. And I want to say that those C's also, while it's not comprehensive, point to the resources that self can bring into the system if self is allowed to be in the space of the internal world. Parts would have to allow that. All right, here we go. Continuing to read. The goal of the self-led project is to facilitate self-leadership of your internal family system. The goal of IFS is to differentiate self from parts. The goal of the self-led project is to facilitate self-leadership of your internal family system. So observing your parts from self allows you to notice and be with your parts from a detached, non-judgmental place. Differentiating again, as Richard Schwartz talks about. If, when observing your parts, you are doing so with curiosity and compassion rather than judgment, resistance, or control, you are observing, at least with some degree of self, your parts. Let me read that again. If, when observing your parts, you are doing so with curiosity and compassion rather than judgment, resistance, or control, you are observing with some degree of self. Any judgment or need to control your parts comes from other parts. When your thoughts or spoken words are generated by self, they will reflect one of the qualities of self. Often the 8 C's are referred to as the qualities of self: confident, creative, compassionate, calm, connected, curious, clear, and courageous. Some additional ones that are often referred to, additional C's that represent qualities of self, are caring, companionship, I really like that one, and choice. I like all of them, of course. By the way, the graphic in the self-led project on that page 36, it was given. I was given permission to use that by the creator of it, Melissa Sanford, who is a coach that uses IFS, and she can be. You can find out more about her at 1000 Paths, 1000paths.com. All right, moving on to page 37. Self is in constant partnership and collaboration with parts. The degree of self presence varies as parts are activated and as they heal. In addition to the 8 C's, you may be more in self, quotation marks around in self, rather than under the influence, in self rather than under the influence of a part when experiencing one of the following states of being. And there's a nice long list, including loving, playful, unflappable, great word, present, integrating, content, open, relaxed, collaborative. Lots of other words that might point to self and not so much to point toward parts. I think later we'll get into talking some more about self-led parts compared to burdened parts. Self-led parts have a lot of these same qualities as well because they have made room for self. All right, so recognizing when you experience one of these qualities will help you notice if you are viewing circumstances through the lens of self or through the lens of one or more of your parts. And I kind of wish when I'd written this that I would have said, or through the lens of one of or more of your burdened, still burdened parts. When considering if your perspective in response to what is being perceived is mostly influenced by a part or by self, ask, do I feel calm, compassionate, curious, and clear? If you can answer yes, you are perceiving the circumstance through the clear lens of self. You can trust yourself to respond to circumstances with clarity and wisdom. All right. The next part of this is, does self have an agenda? I'll do that in a separate video. See you in a moment in that next video if you're going to move on and stay with me here.